I could have saved over a year's worth of getting stuck, of blood, sweat, and tears, trying to go from skinny fat to lean and muscled had I not committed these 3 mistakes. You know how it feels. Being at a body fat percentage that's disproportionately high compared to your weight, and no one else seems to get it. It can be a lonely journey when others don't understand that how you look and feel naked in the mirror is not how you appear to be in clothes. They don't see the stubborn fat that you see day after day after day. What makes going from skinny fat to muscle so much more difficult than just losing fat or gaining muscle is the inherent lose-lose dilemma we feel stuck in. So, do you want to lose weight or gain weight? Yes. Either you lose more weight and look and feel worse about it, or you try to gain more weight but risk undoing your hard-earned weight loss progress. I've been there. My co-coach Lucy and I spent $45,000 and 10 years combined trying to lose fat and gain muscle sustainably, and we have done it all, including these 3 mistakes. The first and biggest mistake I made actually happened before anything improved with my body composition. Why? Because I felt eternally haunted by the question, should I cut or bulk? We all know if you're overweight, lose fat or cut. If you're underweight, build muscle or bulk. But what to do if you're in between? Typically, you got here as a result of prolonged dieting and exercise without paying attention to muscle and body composition. You know you should build muscle at some point, but you still have fat to lose. What if you get too big? But if you lose any more, could you wreck your progress? And that was my first mistake, making things more complicated than it needed to be. What made it complicated was all the noise on the internet, which triggered all the unnecessary what-ifs in my head. So the first thing I had to do was to stop looking for what others have to say and consult myself on what do I actually want to do and what am I afraid of if I do it. My simple answer was, I actually want to keep losing fat, but I'm afraid it's not healthy at this stage. That means knowing whether or not it's healthy is the real deal breaker here. So then the next question is, what would make it not healthy? From a physical standpoint, it would be unhealthy to lose more weight if I can't afford to lose more muscle. This is because even if you eat lots of protein, prolonged weight loss will always come with little muscle loss. I already know I have fat to lose, but I realized I had no idea how much muscle I had left in the tank. What changed the question from bulk or cut to can I afford to gain more fat or lose more muscle? The answer gets clearer. Here's my general recommendation. Choose bulk if your BMI is on the lower side of average, but body fat percentage is not. That typically means less than or equal to 20 BMI and greater than 25% for women or 15% for men. Or if you just feel physically weak and low energy. Otherwise, feel free to cut. For me, when I saw how high my body fat percentage was in relation to my BMI and how low energy I already was, I decided I couldn't afford to lose more muscle. Note, the choice is even easier if you're new to progressive overload strength training, because beginners can lose fat and gain muscle at the same time. And by progressive overload, I mean using heavy weights and increasing the weight over time, not light weights. If you've not done progressive overload strength training for over 1 year, or if it's been more than 2 to 3 months since you have last done it, then you're in this category. That means you should see fat loss and muscle gain if you eat in a mild calorie deficit, increase protein, and start strength training. Typical guidelines for this is to eat a 10% calorie deficit, 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight, and strength train in the 8 to 12 rep range. But hold off on implementing this until you get to my mistake 2. By consulting myself, I simplified the decision-making criteria to something very specific. Then once I finally made a choice and committed to something that made sense to me, my inner fear monger quieted down long enough for me to start actually seeing a difference in my body. For a while anyway. It wasn't long before new problems started arising. And if you have ever worried about gaining too much fat while bulking or losing too much muscle when cutting, then this next mistake will resonate with you. Mistake 2. After my beginner phase, I increased my calories by 10 to 20% over my maintenance, which is what all the experts recommended, so I could continue building more muscle. Then I realized a little too late that I was starting to get bigger and not in the way I wanted. I remember I got to skinny fat because I lost too much muscle when I cut calories. Now I was getting fatter again after increasing calories. My worst nightmare. I was heading back to square one. Furthermore, I was getting burnt out eating so much protein all day. If my lesson learned from my first mistake was to commit to a script, my lesson for the second one was knowing when to change it. I was not taking my own body's feedback into account. There are two core principles that all body recomp advice center around. The first is the principle of energy balance, which says, if you eat more calories than you burn, you'll gain weight, and if you eat less, you lose weight. The second is the principle of energy allocation, which tells your body to target fat or muscle. This is largely determined by strength training and protein. If you strength train and eat more protein, then more of the weight will be going into muscle and coming from fat. I thought that as long as I was eating lots of protein and strength training, all my gain should go into the muscle. What I didn't realize was how fat and muscle respond to energy deficits and surplus over time. When people start losing weight for the first time, they see mostly fat loss. But if they keep eating lower calories over time, they'll start seeing less weight coming from fat and more being taken out of muscle. This is how you got to the skinny fat place in the first place. A similar thing happens when people start adding protein and strength training. They'll see fat loss and muscle gain for a few weeks or months. This is the beginner phase. It doesn't last forever, and you'll know because your gains will stop. At this point, if you still want to build muscle, you can increase calories. You'll start to see some muscle gain, but it will be slow over time just because your body has limits. If you continue to increase calories past what your body is capable of building, you'll start gaining more fat again. This was what was happening with me. This is why it's important to track your progress. At some point in your journey, you'll have to read your own body's messages to know whether or not to change your calorie, protein, or training intensity. Imagine a messaging system between you and your body. You send your body messages of what you'd like it to do via how much calories and protein you eat and how much strength training you do. Your body sends messages back to you in the form of your weight, body measurements, and strength improvements. As you track your progress week over week, it will inform you what to do the following week. You can use your weight and body measurements to estimate your body fat using the Navy body fat calculator linked below. If you're trying to lose fat but notice body fat percentage increasing despite weight going down, that probably means you need to add more protein. Similarly, if you're trying to gain muscle and notice you are actually gaining more fat than lean mass, which you can reverse engineer if you multiply your weight by your body fat percentage, you may actually need to decrease calories. And if your strength gains are not progressing, or you actually see a drop in lean mass while eating in a calorie surplus, you may need to increase protein, increase calories, or take a deload week from training. There are more scenarios you may run into based on different combinations of these variables, but these are the most common ones we see in both our personal and coaching experiences. When I really started tracking my progress, I realized I didn't need as high a surplus as other sources suggested, and I reduced my calories. I also realized I didn't need as much protein as other sources suggested. I noticed I was still making gains in the gym despite eating lower protein. Once I did the work to read my body's messages and react accordingly, I was able to minimize fat mass and gain mostly lean mass again. Things looked good for another few months until I hit my biggest roadblock of them all. And this one kept me stuck on a hamster wheel for so long I didn't make progress for over half a year. This is also the point where most people quit. Yet despite being one of the hardest lessons to learn, in retrospect, it was one of the simplest to understand. Mistake 3. After my first bulk and cut cycle, I still had some more muscle to gain and fat to lose, so I tried to bulk again. This time, nothing happened. Every week I saw no change, and every week I tried to tweak something. I went through every combination of tweaks I could make, and still nothing changed. I felt my psychology revert back to the beginning again, in the wheel spinning doom loop. What happened? The truth is that the leaner you get, the longer it will take to see changes. After the first few months, you may see a drastic decrease in rate to the point where it's not reasonable to expect your body to respond to the messages every week or even every 2 weeks. Many sources say that a woman can gain 1 pound of muscle per month and a man 2 pounds. However, within the first year, that rate can be cut in half. That translates to 1/8 of a pound per week for women. Taking scale fluctuations into account, it can take as much as 1 to 2 months to see results. Most of us get used to fast progress at first and feel something is wrong when things slow down, which causes us to panic change things up to force something to happen. That's like forcing snail mail to get delivered from you to your body and back at the rate of email. Yelling at it to go faster will only make you more frustrated. This is why I say read your body's messages versus listening to your body. Listening to your body implies in the moment feedback, but in order to read your body's messages, you have to wait for it to get delivered back to you first. When I dialed my expectations back to reality, I stopped trying to change things just because numbers weren't moving the right direction every 1 or 2 weeks. Instead, I increased wait time to match reality and reclaimed my sanity. In the end, it's not about finding any exact answers to your problems. That mentality only creates more fear that keeps us from trusting ourselves, paying attention to our own bodies, and staying stuck in forever researching options but afraid to jump. But I know it wasn't just me who's had to learn those lessons. It's hard to read your body's messages with a clear head and know how long is long enough to expect. In our Badass Body Boss program, we hold weekly progress check-ins for students, and many times a student may report feeling stuck or not sure why the numbers come out a certain way. If you too want a coach to help guide you on how to read your body's messages and know how long to expect things, then check out the free sneak peek to my Badass Body Boss program linked in the description and comments below. Going from skinny fat to lean and muscled took a long time, but eventually I got to where I wanted to be, and so can you. And if you want to uplevel your understanding even more, learn about the different strategies for body recomp without having to go through traditional bulk and cutting phases, check out this video on different cycling methods. And always remember, you can do it.